Hello, my friends. In this video, we will be taking a look at the autosomal DNA, predicted phenotype traits, and G25 results of a Mesolithic hunter-gatherer from Spain, LaBrana 2. What's interesting about this sample, LaBrana 2, is his Y DNA is actually C, which is a Cro-Magnon lineage, and it's very different from the Western hunter-gatherer lineages, which are typical for other Western hunter-gatherers in Europe, such as I2. I2, which is the typical hunter-gatherer lineage. This individual actually has lineage C1A, which is like a remnant of the Cro-Magnon lineages that used to inhabit Europe in the Paleolithic period. But this person lived in Iberia in the Mesolithic. The time period that this person lived in is 60 to 57 centuries before the Common Era. The mitochondrial lineage here is actually U5, and with James Lick tool, we can determine that the closest, the best mitochondrial haplogroup match is U5B2C1. Very interesting lineage. I don't know much about it, but in case you know where it is most commonly distributed, definitely write that in the comments. U5B2C1. It seems to descend from HV. Definitely quite interesting. All right, so this is a common depiction of LaBrana, what this individual might have looked like. As you can see, is depicted looking very dark pigmentation of skin and hair, and blue eyes. Definitely very interesting. This depiction has sparked a lot of controversy, and in this video, we're going to try to use the raw data file that I have for this individual and my tools for pigmentation prediction to sort of figure out, does this prediction have any basis in reality? Did this person really look this way? We're gonna figure this out. Okay, so for the ethnic portion of what ethnicities this person resembled, this person pretty much resembles various Northern Europeans, Latvians, Lithuanians, Karelians, Estonians show up as the closest ethnicities to this individual. The closest ethnicity are actually Latvians and Lithuanians, which is not that surprising because these are the Northern Europeans in Europe who essentially have the most hunter-gatherer admixture, who are the most proximate to European hunter-gatherers. They have the least Caucasian and the least farmer, the least Neolithic admixture in Europe. They have the least Southern and Mediterranean admixture in Europe. The reason Samis don't show up closest, because Samis technically have even less, is because Samis have a little bit too much East Eurasian and Siberian admixture. So if Samis did not have any Siberian admixture, I think Samis would show up even closer. But Samis have a little bit too much Siberian and East Eurasian admixture to show up closest to LaBrana. Keep in mind, LaBrana, this individual essentially falls into this cluster of individuals of European hunter-gatherers who are indigenous Europeans. These people lived in Europe before the farmers and the Indo-Europeans got into Europe and spread all these southern, all these Mediterranean, all these genetics that are foreign to Europe, all these Mediterranean-like admixtures that are foreign to Europe came into Europe. So these people are indigenous Europeans, and they resemble people who have the most indigenous European admixture, which are Baltic people, Latvians and Lithuanians and Karelians and Estonians. All these people carry the most indigenous European admixture in Europe today. So this is nothing surprising whatsoever. Now let's see what this LaBrana 2 individual from Spain resembles. I find it quite interesting. This individual lived in Spain, but Spanish people are nowhere to be found in the closest populations. So Spanish people are very Mediterranean. Spanish people don't have much admixture from people like this. Spanish people don't have a lot of Western hunter-gatherer admixture, especially compared to like Latvians or Lithuanians. Spanish people are not very Western hunter-gatherer. But anyway, let's look at the Nashakot calculator results. Let's see what phenotype this individual look like. So it looks like he has green or hazel or blue eyes with an amber center. So for eye color, looks like his eye color is most likely green, hazel, or blue eyes with an amber center. So not blue eyes, not this kind of depiction where he's depicted with blue eyes. This is probably not the case for him. And I think this is like the same type of depiction that I got for Cheddarman as well. So it's kind of intermediate eye color. intermediate type of eye color, where it's depicted with green or blue at amber center or hazel eyes. Um, Definitely not dark brown eyes, probably not brown eyes, but also probably not blue eyes. For hair color likelihood distribution, most likely he has black hair color, so quite dark for hair color. The hair color, they got it right. And for skin color distribution, most likely he has olive or Mediterranean skin, followed by light brown skin, and definitely not white or palest skin tone. So definitely not white skinned, quite dark for the skin tone actually. Olive or Mediterranean or light brown skin for the skin tone. And for the hair texture, looks like he has curly or wavy hair. And straight hair is also quite possible, and kinky hair is out of the picture. So he most likely has curly or wavy hair. For the nose shape, it looks like it's kind of indecisive. It's pretty much equally split between Greek and snub. So quite indecisive. Somewhere between Greek and snub nose shape. So what's interesting about the blue eye haplotype 2 and HERC2 and OCA2 region is that he has 2 light color variants in all of the relevant variations of HERC2, which is typical for Western hunter-gatherers. All the Western hunter-gatherers I've looked at so far had the same exact genotype here, which is 2 light color variants in all the relevant variations for HERC2. So he has blue eye haplotype 3 and 2 and 1. This is very typical genotype for Western hunter-gatherers. Okay, but he does not have blue eyes because of this essentially. No light color variants in SLC 45A2, and does he have any in SLC 2045? No genotype here, so unfortunately we don't know his genotype for SLC 2045, but we can assume he doesn't have any light color variants here either. If he did have a genotype here, we would have a more precise prediction, but we don't have a genotype for this variation, unfortunately. He does have 1 light color variant in this variation of IRF4. I noticed that it's quite typical for Western hunter-gatherers and European hunter-gatherers in general to have 2 light color variants here. And the light color variants here in general are quite typical for European hunter-gatherers, so this is not surprising. And this leads to lighter pigmentation of eyes, hair, and skin. And he does not have any light color variants in MC1R, so doesn't have any predisposition to ginger pigmentation of eyes, hair, and skin. Ginger pigmentation of hair, and I guess skin as well, because ginger affects skin too. MC1R affects skin as well. Okay. This is quite interesting. So this looks similar to Cheddarman's results, and this looks similar to the other Western hunter-gatherers I've seen thus far. Let's see what he looks like for the phenotype oracle. Let's see what phenotypes he resembles the most. So it looks like the phenotypes that he's resembling are this. This is the closest phenotype to him, followed by this. And this takes into account the Nashakot results and the phenotype morphology oracle, which takes into account the SNPs that are relevant for phenotype. So this is the closest phenotype to him, followed by this, followed by this. And the closest mixture is a mixture of 50% NAT plus 50% NAT, followed by 50% NAT plus 50% NAT, followed by 50% NAT plus 50% NIS. So the closest mixture is essentially this kind of like stranded, darkish looking Northern European plus darkish looking Northern European. This is the darkish looking Northern European is the closest type of phenotype to this individual, and the second closest type of phenotype is a mixture of the darkish looking Northern European with green eyes plus the Southern European individual. Definitely quite interesting. All right, let's see the biomarkers results for the sample for LaBrana 2. So it looks like they have a predisposition to below average levels of vitamin D, a predisposition to above average levels of LDL cholesterol, below average levels of HDL cholesterol, definitely very unfortunate and unhealthy. Below average levels of glucose, this is quite good. Above average levels of hemoglobin, this is quite good. Average blood pressure, quite typical. Average level of iron in the blood, so it looks like they might have some variants for hemochromatosis, I'm not sure. It looks like they have average predisposition to sex hormone binding globulin. Looks like they have average level of red blood cell count in blood. slightly below average number of base pairs for telomere length. So actually, not even slightly, significantly below average number of base pairs. So definitely shorter lifespan and longer height. So predisposition to taller height, quite good. Definitely very interesting. Let's see the polygenic risk scores results. So it looks like they have a predisposition to hemoglobin E disease. They have 2 risk variants here. Looks like they have a predisposition to average odds for migraine, average odds for lupus, average odds for gout, average odds for thyroid cancer, average odds for eczema, average odds for every type of glaucoma, average odds for polycystic ovary syndrome, average odds for cataracts, very high odds for age-related macular degeneration. So let's look it up actually. Let's look up age-related macular degeneration. Let's see what they have for that in the file. They have um, they have this gene that leads to a significant increase in the odds for AMD. They have this gene that leads to a significant increase in the odds of AMD. They have this gene that leads to a significant increase in the odds of AMD. So it looks like they also have this gene that leads to a increase in the odds of AMD. So it makes sense the way they score the way they did for AMD. All right, it makes sense. Okay. It looks like they have a above average score for rheumatoid arthritis as well. Let's look that up too. Let's see what they have for that. So it looks like they have um, 2 genotypes for significant increase in the odds of rheumatoid arthritis. Definitely very interesting. And this is actually a very uncommon genotype too. All right. Um, okay. It looks like they have a above average odds for Tourette's syndrome. Looks like they have average odds for epilepsy. Looks like they have average odds for asthma. Looks like they have slightly below average odds for leukemia. Looks like they have very high odds for vitiligo. Looks like they have slightly above average odds for myopia. Looks like they have average odds for corneal astigmatism. Looks like they have slightly above average odds for primary biliary cirrhosis. Looks like they have slightly below average odds for stroke. Looks like they have above average, definitely very high odds for male pattern hair loss. So, which is quite typical, male pattern hair loss, scoring high for male pattern hair loss is typical for Europeans. Looks like they have below average odds for atrial fibrillation. No risk variants found in the file. Looks like they have below average odds for deep vein thrombosis. Looks like they have average odds for unipolar depression. Looks like they have average odds for bipolar type 1. Looks like they have above average odds for schizophrenia. Looks like they have very high odds for type 2 diabetes and average odds for type 1 diabetes. Looks like they have above average odds for Alzheimer's. Very low odds for multiple sclerosis, so it looks like they probably don't have much risk variance in the HLA gene. 4 risk variants for breast cancer out of 16, and 14 risk variants for testicular cancer out of 24, and a lot of risk variants in the important variations of KITL-G gene, so definitely quite cooked. Actually, when I'm looking at it, I see 1 risk variant in here, 1 risk variant in here, and 1 risk variant in here. So, from what I know about the distribution of the alleles in KITL-G in Europeans, typically the most common genotype for Europeans is 2 risk variants in all the relevant variations in KITL-G. So actually, he's not even cooked. He's actually a little bit protected from testicular cancer compared to like what's typical for Europeans. So for testicular cancer, he's actually doing pretty good. This is actually quite good, quite a healthy result. 1 risk variant for celiac disease out of 10. All right, a risk variant is here. No risk variants for GSS, 2 risk variants for Crohn's disease out of 24, but this is not marked as important. No risk variants for Riefenstein's, 1 risk variant for Parkinson's out of 10. Let's look it up. Let's see what that is. Okay, wow. That is uncommon. And the odds ratio here, it says, is 9.62. That is really, really uncommon. So let's return to the file. That's really uncommon, really weird. It looks like he has 1 risk variant for Gilbert syndrome out of 6 total, but this is common. No risk variants for basal cell carcinoma, no risk variants for Peutz-Jeghers, no risk variants for hypophagia, no risk variants for GCD, no uncommon risk variants for GCD, no risk variants for Waardenburg syndrome, 9 risk variants for allergies out of 22 total, which is kind of above average, 0 risk variants for FHC, irritable bowel syndrome, 2 common risk variants out of 6 total, Congenital sensitivity to pain, no risk variance here. Brugado syndrome, no risk variance here. Treacher-Collins syndrome, no risk variance here. One risk variant here, but that's common. So it looks like just scrolling past this, I don't really see any risk variants that are uncommon except for this. Looks like I'm seeing 2 risk variants here. Let's look this up. Wow. Okay. That's kind of weird. That's wild. Okay, that's wild. That is wild. So it looks like he carries a genotype that predisposes him to Marfan syndrome. That's quite interesting. So far we know to watch out for age-related macular degeneration, arthritis, and Parkinson's. So far, those are the variants we picked out here. Let's look at the OCA2 and HERC2 eye color estimator. This takes into account only the genotypes in OCA2 and HERC2 to estimate eye color. And here we see that the result is a resounding 50.08% for blue eyes and 0% for dark brown, 0.819 for brown. So you can see that if we take into account only the HERC2 and OCA2 region, then the result for eye color is very different. The result for eye color then is very, very blue. But if you take into account the other genes, then the result for eye color is very different, right? So, of course, if you take into account every gene together, then this person most likely has green eyes. But if you take into account only the HERC2 and OCA2 genes, most likely this person has blue eye color. I think it's quite interesting. That's why I'm not going to remove this little button here. I think it might be, fascinating for people to see that. Of course, the more accurate in terms of precision and accuracy is the result that takes into account everything. So Nashakot result is the more accurate result. So this person most likely does have indeed green eye color and not blue eye color, as was predicted with this panel. But still, I think it's interesting and it might be, just from a scientific point of view, more interesting for people to be able to check what they would score if you only take one gene into account. Anyway, let's move on to the monogenic traits section of the result and see what they score for that. So it looks like this person is definitely a warrior. Actually, this might be the highest score for warrior and the lowest score for warrior I've ever seen with any sample so far. So definitely predisposition to slower dopamine reuptake and higher dopamine levels, lower stress resiliency. This takes into account all the genotypes in COMT, MAOA, and MAOB. So if you take into account all the relevant variations in COMT, MAOA, and MAOB, this person has a predisposition to slower dopamine reuptake and higher dopamine levels. When it comes to dopamine D2 receptor sites, this person has a predisposition to intermediate number of D2 receptor sites, so not less, not more, pretty much intermediate. And for levels of 5-HT and serotonin, looks like this person has a predisposition to intermediate levels of 5-HT and serotonin, so most likely does not have 5-HT-TLRPR. Let's look at that actually. Indeed, it does not have long form 5-HT-TLRPR, so he has short form 5-HT-TLRPR, and actually slight predisposition to lower levels of 5-HT. Looks like slight predisposition to lower levels of 5-HT, but still the highest thing they score is intermediate levels. So still, the largest percentage here is intermediate levels of 5-HT and serotonin. It looks like no dwarfism, less extreme alcoholism, and all the typical genotypes that are common for variations relevant to sleep. When it comes to autism and predispositions to autism, it looks like they have higher odds of autism. When it comes to results for lactose persistence, it looks like they do not have any variants for European lactose persistence. They do not carry any variants for European lactose persistence. My trait predictor looks for 4 variants for lactose persistence, and they don't carry any of these 4. For OXTR and empathy gene, it looks like they have a predisposition to higher level of empathy based on these 5 genotypes right here. Their predisposition is to a higher degree of empathy, which is quite interesting. For diabetes, we remember they score really high for type 2, really low for type 1. Okay, multiple sclerosis, no risk variance in the HLA gene. For cardiovascular disease panel, looks like they have a predisposition to lower odds of cardiovascular issues. Definitely really good to see here. So predisposition to lower odds of cardiovascular issues. And For facial morphology panel, definitely quite interesting here. What's interesting here is that they have a genotype in this variation of EDAR, which is non-European. No European EDAR alleles, and likely not a European in ancestry. This is a genotype that is unusual, uncommon, atypical for Europeans to have. Something I just noticed right here is for the vitiligo panel, they actually have two risk variants for vitiligo in the HLA gene, and I remember they scored high for the vitiligo as well. I think 1.7 or something, 1.7 odds ratio for vitiligo. That explains why they have risk variants for vitiligo in the HLA gene, as well as this genotype, which also increases the odds of vitiligo. Aside from this really uncommon genotype for Europeans in the EDAR gene, they also have genotypes for shorter midface length, higher odds of protruding nasal bridge, larger nose size, and thinner eyebrows. Looks like they don't have micropenis. Looks like this individual has impaired muscle performance, likely endurance athlete, rather than strength or power athlete. And okay, let's see what else can I talk about here. No, not a carrier for any of the variants for albinism. Also not a carrier for Melanesian blonde hair variants. Also not a carrier for familiar Mediterranean fever mutations. All right. For MTHFR panel, looks like he has a variant for impaired folate metabolism, but overall, most of the variations, most of the alleles he has in the MTHFR gene are quite good and benign. For alcoholism panel, definitely below average odds for alcoholism, quite good here. For cancer section, you can see this genotype. These are the genotypes in the KIT-LG gene that were mentioned in the polygenic risk scores page. All of these are heterozygous genotypes. For Europeans, it is typical to have homozygous risk variants for these variations. So he's actually a little bit better off than most Europeans when it comes to risk variants for testicular cancer. So it's quite good, quite good. He's got strong predisposition to hemoglobin E disease. We saw that already on the polygenic risk score page, and he scores high for the hemoglobin E disease as well. Yeah, so he's scoring 2.6 times the average for hemoglobin E disease because of this genotype. So hemoglobin E disease is definitely a risk risk for him. He has a GG genotype here, which leads to higher odds of glaucoma risk. He has what other risks does he have? He has 4.6 times increased risk of ankylosing spondylitis, and that's pretty much it. There is no other risks that he has. One APOB risk variant for familiar hypercholesteremia out of 8 total, quite typical. And for HIV, HIV viral load, looks like he has one protective variant in this variation right here, which is an atypical genotype that leads to a 60% reduction in HIV viral load. He's quite protected from HIV, it seems. For the HLA panel, it looks like overall he has a sort of a protection from autoimmune disease, which is quite good. So lower odds of autoimmune disease overall, definitely really good. For MTRR gene panel, looks like he does not have any risk variants for collagen metabolism. Actually, no, he does. He does. He has two risk alleles in this variation for intracellular collagen metabolism disorders, and this also leads to 1.4 risk for meningomas and neural tube defects. But overall, most of his genotypes are quite good and benign. For CBS panel, he does not have any risk variants for homocystinuria, and overall, it looks like he has a predisposition to intermediate levels of homocysteine, quite good. Good stuff. Muscular dystrophy myopathies, no risk variants for any muscular dystrophy myopathies. And for color blindness panel, he has one risk variant for color blindness and OPN1SW. For FTO gene panel, looks like he does not have any fat gene variants in FTO, but he does have this genotype which leads to highest odds of extreme obesity. I think this is also an FTO. Let's look it up. Let's go ahead and look this up. I think this is an FTO. It's gotta be an FTO. Yeah, it's FTO. Alright, so this is also FTO. So it looks like these genotypes in FTO, he does not have variants for obesity, but he does have this genotype in FTO for extreme obesity. For the syncope panel, based on 4 SNPs, he has below average odds for syncope, and for the biotraits panel, looks like he has a genotype that is rare, that's associated with increased odds of a migraine. Looks like he has a genotype that's associated with the increased dose of type 2 diabetes. Looks like he has 2 copies of the hunter-gatherer CLT-CL1 gene variant, which is associated with reduced ability to process carbs and sugars. Okay. For vitamins and levels, looks like he has lower levels of vitamin K and another genotype for higher levels of vitamin K. For blood group panel, finally, looks like he has blood type O. Most likely blood type O. It's quite precise. I mean, when you're scoring 92% for blood type O, you're most likely have blood type O. Definitely quite precise result for the blood type right here. There is very little ambiguity in this type of result. Definitely blood type O for him. Well, this was the result for LaBrana 2. I think LaBrana 1 is going to come tomorrow. I'm going to try to cover that tomorrow. This was the result for this individual. Hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content, if you enjoyed this watching this breakdown of the sample, what they score, what their traits and health is, what they resemble, what they look like. And of course, support me by buying my tool, the tool that I use to generate this content, that I use to generate these health and traits reports. It is on my HStore page. Tomorrow I am releasing the version 13, which I use to generate these reports. The version 13 is going to be released tomorrow, and it's going to come with a price increase. But if you bought it today, if you buy my tool today, you can get version 13 tomorrow for free. You can just buy it. You can just download it for free. You can just download the upgrade for free. And the version 13 is going to have all the upgrades that I show in this video. It's going to have everything that I'm showing here. Everything's going to be in there. Probably a little bit more because I'm going to do some coding today. I'm going to do some extra changes, additional additions, add some things. So it's probably going to have even a little bit more. But anyway, I'm going to try to finish that today, and by tomorrow I'm going to try to upload that onto the itch page and get it done. The link to my itch page will be in the description of the video. The link to download this file in 23andMe format for the LaBrana 2 in 23andMe format will be in the description of the video as well. Thanks for watching. Leave a like and subscribe. Goodbye.